Maybe you should stick to teaching rookies at the civilian range. Sweetheart. The words rolled off Colonel Richard Ironhand Colburn's tongue with the kind of smugness only decades in uniform could polish. The room at Ravenwood Advanced Marksmanship Center, Arizona desert sun blazing through its steel shutters, rippled with quiet laughter. Staff Sergeant Elena Cross didn't flinch, 31 years old, 5'7" in her combat boots, dark hair cinched into a regulation bun. She had heard it all before. She wasn't here to win popularity. She was here because SOCOM had sent her, tucked inside an evaluation team more comfortable with binders than rifles. The senior officers reviewed paperwork. Elena walked into the ranges. Colburn had built his reputation on doctrine, publishing articles in military journals about windage charts and ballistic curves. Today, he stood at the podium, lecturing a room full of Rangers, SEALs, and Green Berets about long-range engagement at 100 meters, when Elena quietly corrected his equation on the Coriolis effect. Silence struck sharper than a rifle crack. Dozens of eyes snapped to her, some amused, others hostile, to them. She was another desk sergeant pretending to play sniper. Colburn's jaw tightened. He'd made his career teaching these calculations. And now a woman with an evaluation badge had called him wrong in front of his own cadre. His response came cold, measured, designed to humiliate. He told her the 1,000-yard range was hot if she knew so much about ballistics. She could prove it under the Arizona sun. And that's when the ghost of Ironveil Highlands began to stir. You're watching quiet Valor stories where untold military stories finally come to light. Drop a comment with where you're watching from, and we might greet you in the next video. They didn't know Elena Cross had spent 4 brutal years in the Ironveil Highlands, a battleground so hostile that Black Hawks often refused to land. Official records painted her as intelligence support. The truth was carved into the battered stock of her M2010 sniper rifle, 119 tally marks. Each cut after a patrol came home alive because someone on a ridgeline had chosen precision over sleep. Her gift hadn't come from the army. It came from her mother, Marta Cross, an Olympic biathlete turned FBI sniper instructor, while other kids played soccer in suburban parks. Elena was prone on the firing line at Quantico, learning how to slow her pulse, how to read wind slicing through pines one weekend and open Montana plains the next. Her mother drilled into her a lesson that never left shooting is meditation with consequences. Every round fired rewrites a life, one way or another. By 19, Elena was already a competitive shooting prodigy. The Army marksmanship unit scouted her for international tournaments. She turned them down. She didn't want medals for hitting paper. She wanted purpose. The SOCOM experiment that quietly attached women to special operations teams gave her that purpose. In the Highlands, they called her a guardian angel. She preferred ghost. Her first kill came on her 3rd day in country. A Taliban fighter crouched over an IED along Route Sentinel, the lifeline for convoys, hauling fuel and water, 812 meters, downhill angle, morning thermals clawing at the scope, one breath, half exhale, trigger break. The bomb never ignited. The convoy never even knew. From then on, the ledger grew a commander caught with his hand on a detonator. A machine gunner silenced before he shredded a pinned-down squad. Each shot saved lives. Each notch dug into her. And around her neck, a thin silver chain carried the names of 3 teammates she hadn't saved ghosts of her own making. At Ravenwood. None of that existed on paper. To Colburn and his cadre, she was just another staff sergeant in pressed fatigues. But when she corrected his math on Coriolis drift, the temperature in the lecture hall shifted. Colburn's eyes hardened. If she wanted to talk like a sniper, he'd drag her into the desert sun and see if she could shoot like one. Colonel Richard Ironhand Colburn had built a career on numbers, publishing ballistic charts in journals that cadets memorized like gospel. Now, in front of 39 hardened instructors, a staff sergeant with an evaluation badge had corrected his math. His face tightened, voice cold as steel. If you think you understand long-range ballistics better than the man who wrote the manual, Cross, then prove it. The 1,000-yard line is hot. The room shifted instantly. Rangers, SEALs, and Green Berets smirked, already picturing her failure. No one turned down a challenge like this, not when rank and ego were on the line. Elena rose without a word. Outside, the desert sun beat down on Ravenwood's long-range range, heat mirages rippling over the sand. From the back of her battered Humvee, she pulled her rifle, an M2010 enhanced sniper rifle. Tan Cerakote scarred from years of Afghan rock and dust. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't new. But it was hers. Colburn's lips curved in a mocking smile, bringing a personal rifle to a professional evaluation. Maybe you'd be more comfortable with something lighter. His tone dripped with condescension. Elena ignored him. She dropped prone, cheek pressed against a stock worn smooth by 4 deployments. The wind gusted 22 knots from the west. Mirage boiled heavy in the desert air. She didn't touch the weather meter issued by the school. She didn't need it. Reading conditions was as natural to her as breathing. 10 rounds. 1 minute. The trigger broke crisp. Brass spun in perfect arcs, and steel rang in rapid succession. When the dust settled, her grouping at 1,000 yards was so tight a quarter could cover it. The smirks vanished. Silence stretched, broken only by the clang of the target swaying in the wind. Colburn's jaw flexed. Do it again, this time at 1,200. His words suggested luck. But his eyes betrayed something else: curiosity, maybe even doubt. Elena shifted her scope to the 5 steel plates set at 1,200 meters, each no bigger than a dinner plate. Candidates averaged 40% first-round hits here. Elena didn't hesitate. 5 shots, 5 strikes. The metallic impacts echoed like a countdown to humility. The crowd of instructors stood frozen, watching brass tumble beside her like golden confessions. Elena felt the old weight return, the same isolation she had carried through the Ironveil Highlands. Back then, male snipers questioned her shots until the results spoke louder. Stateside, range officers assumed she was somebody's girlfriend until she outshot them on their own lanes. The pattern never changed. Every notch on her rifle carried a story. The teenager at 1921 meters who nearly leveled a schoolhouse. The insurgent commander silenced seconds before detonating under a medical convoy. The machine gunner who had an entire squad pinned until her bullet broke the storm. But here, at Ravenwood, with perfect firing lines and measured distances, none of that mattered. To them, she was still just another woman who didn't belong. And Colonel Colburn wasn't finished testing her. On most ranges, performance was measured in neat shot groups, badges on a uniform, or the number of deployments stitched into a tab. But Elena Cross lived by a harsher currency. Lives saved by bullets no one else ever knew were fired. She thought about Specialist Marcus Doyle walking again because she had erased 3 insurgents waiting in ambush. He never knew her name. None of them did. 7 men from the 101st who broke out of a kill box because Elena cut a hole in enemy lines at 1,900 meters. They thanked God, not realizing that God's hand was steady that day because of a woman with a rifle 2 clicks away. Colonel Colburn walked toward the firing line. Face unreadable, boots crunching over desert gravel. Elena safed her weapon, the motions flowing from muscle memory built over 4 deployments. Her breathing was calm, but the weight of the moment pressed heavier than any rucksack she had ever carried. Colburn bent down and lifted the rifle from the mat. At first, He handled it like an instructor evaluating gear. Then his eyes narrowed. Along the stock, etched deep into the tan cerakote, were rows of tally marks, groups of 5, cut with a blade as steady as a surgeon's. Not decorative scratches, functional counts. His fingers traced them, and the color drained from his face. "What do they represent?" he asked. Voice low but audible across the line. "Reminders," Elena said simply. The instructors around her laughed. One suggested she was tracking qualification scores. Another muttered about participation trophies. But Colburn's hand kept moving, and his fingertips brushed against something cold. Metallic, hidden on the underside of the stock. A small plate, military issue. Laser-etched numbers, 119. Colburn froze. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He knew what those numbers meant. No female sniper in recorded army history carried that count. Few men did. Slowly, he set the rifle down, as if it might detonate. His voice cut sharp across the range. "Why didn't you mention your background when you arrived?" Elena's answer was calm, deliberate. "Because I was sent to evaluate your curriculum, Colonel. Not compare resumes. But since you asked, I've identified 17 gaps in your training. Gaps that mean the difference between a missed shot and a flag-draped coffin." A ripple moved through the cadre. Colburn didn't hesitate. He called every instructor forward, 39 of the Army's finest snipers, each with combat tours and reputations built in blood. "Staff Sergeant Cross will demonstrate techniques learned in the Ironveil Highlands," he announced. "Pay attention. Manuals don't cover what kept her alive." Elena dropped prone once more. She explained how to fire through rotor wash from a Black Hawk, how altitude density warped flight paths at 8,000 feet, how thermals in concrete villages turned wind into invisible traps. Then she placed Sergeant Marcus Doyle on the spotting scope and set a target at 1,500 meters, only a human head exposed. The wind gusted 22 knots, shifting between full and quartering value. She adjusted her hold and let the silence build. One shot, she told herself. No second chances. And when she squeezed the trigger, every man on that range leaned in, knowing they were about to witness something the manual had never prepared them for. The mathematics behind her shots stunned even the most seasoned instructors' spin drift. Altitude density, Earth's rotation bending a bullet's path across miles of open air. Elena explained it calmly, like she was teaching a language only ghosts understood. At 1,500 meters, her first round struck steel, then another, and another, 5 in a row. Each hit silenced the desert more than the crack of her rifle ever could. When Colonel Colburn finally asked the question every man was thinking, his voice had lost its arrogance. How many lives did those kills save? Elena's reply was steady. Hundreds. Maybe. But I don't count the saved. I count the 3 I couldn't reach in time. She didn't say more. The names were etched where no one could see on the silver chain against her chest. On scars, memory never let fade. That winter, 17 chapters of the Sniper School Manual were rewritten, credited to lessons learned from SOCOM operations. Her name appeared nowhere. At her request, it never would. For 8 months, she trained Ravenwood's cadre, men who would go on to train generations more. She taught them that marksmanship was 10% trigger squeeze, 90% endurance reading terrain when exhausted, making impossible shots when terrified, carrying the weight of decisions no medal could ease. Before she left, Colburn broke tradition. In a private ceremony, he placed an award in her hands, Instructor of the Year. No outsider had ever earned it. His citation was simple. She contributed more to sniper training effectiveness than any individual in this school's history. Yours later. Medical retirement ended her service. Today she trains federal law enforcement in precision shooting. In a safe in her office lies the M2010. The stock still bears 119 notches, each mark a life taken so others could live. Each mark a reminder that precision has no gender-only purpose. Each notch on the rifle was not just a mark of death, it was proof of lives saved. And Elena reminded the world of one truth: precision belongs not to gender, but to those who dare to carry its burden.